Hey guys, welcome to Thrive Bites, the official podcast of Dr. Colin Zhu, aka the Chef Doc. On every episode, I talk with health and wellness experts from all over the world, such as doctors, chefs, dietitians, coaches, and many more. And I sit down with them and have casual conversations about plant-based lifestyle, how to elevate our emotional resilience, and what it really means to thrive. And I bring all of this to you. So let's get to this week's episode. Okay, guys, well, welcome to another episode of Thrive Bites. I'm your host, Colin Zhu, and thank you for listening on. Today, I have a wonderful, wonderful guest for you today. This is Dr. Jen Caudle. Say hi to everyone, Jen.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I really appreciate it. For those of you who do not know who Dr. Jen is, she is a board-certified family medicine physician, and she's an associate professor at Rowan University School of Osteopathic Medicine. Always shout out to my osteopaths out there. And she is a regular on-air health expert for local and national news networks, including the Today Show, the Dr. Oz Show, CNN, Rachael Ray, and Steve Harvey Show. And thank you so much for coming on.
Of course. I'm really excited to be here, and I love your podcast. This is really this is awesome. So thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you. So I love it when I hear about my guests and how they get from point A to point B. And you seem to have a very, very colorful, career path. A very, not only colorful, but also very, very unique. Not only are you a family physician, but you're also a musician. You've done pageant competitions in the past, and you lecture, and currently you do a lot of medical media broadcasting. So I really, really enjoy hearing about people's stories about how they go from point A to point B. And I would love to know, how did you get to this point?
So my path has been a little bit kind of a winding path, but I often feel like it's what's made things really interesting for me, and I'm really grateful. I always say that, like so many other people, I wanted to be a doctor, early on, certainly in college and a little bit before. But I had this sort of unusual opportunity to compete in the Miss America system when I was around a sophomore in college. It wasn't anything that I had really wanted to do or looked to do when I was growing up, but I soon found out that the Miss America system is the world's largest scholarship organization for women. And at the time, I was, working 4 jobs at Princeton, delivering newspapers, working in the dining hall. I was playing string quartet gigs, all this stuff. So the money was needed, and I actually decided to compete in order to get scholarship money. So what happened, though, was, I feel really blessed that 4 pageants later, I ended up in the Miss America system. Miss America pageant in 1999 and competing. Now, I didn't win the title of Miss America or anything like that, but it was this opportunity, and I spent my year as Miss Iowa, which was my state, doing a lot of speaking, doing television, doing a lot of sort of public outreach, and that's what really got me used to that type of work, and I think that really contributed to my ability to do medical broadcasting now. So then you fast forward, I ended up going to med school, which was always in my plan, and doing all of that. But I always knew I wanted to come back to trying to communicate healthcare information once I was a doctor. And, that's one of the reasons why now as a physician, I do television. I have a blog. I have a newsletter. I educate as much as I can. And I feel really lucky to be able to do so. So yeah, that's a little snippet of my back.
Yeah, and I've been following you, for quite some time, and for myself and others, and we're both on the group for doctors on social media. It can be a very, very not only a full-time job, but it can also be a little bit daunting for those of us who are not familiar with so many different avenues, and it seems like it continues to, evolve. And it's interesting. Do you do all of it yourself in terms of the blogging and the social media, and do you upkeep all of that?
I do. I have someone who helps me with comments and responding to requests and things like that, because I get more comments and messages and requests than I can read and respond to, and I like to respond. So
Good.
I have someone helping me with that, but I mean, in terms of all the content creation, I obviously have somebody that builds my web. I don't build the website and doesn't build the blog, but yeah, I do all that myself at this point. It probably will change at a point, but you know, I like being involved in the information I'm delivering, and that's what I do on TV. I write my own segments. I do my own talking points, so it doesn't feel much different than that.
So I want to speak more about the communication part because, you know, for the broadcasting, it's really about conveying, you know, good, solid, you know, clear information to the public and, you know, to the general public at wide. How did you, you know, get to that point in deciding that, okay, this is kind of like the centerpiece of, you know, what I want to do? Because, you know, we are faced, you know, in this current age with a lot of misinformation and pseudoscience. So did it dawn on you that, okay, you know what, I just want to be able to be a solid voice for people to get really good health information?
Well, yeah, and like as I mentioned, you know, I think my work being in the Miss America system and sort of speaking, as I mentioned, you know, going into med school, that's when I knew I wanted to not just be a doctor, but I also wanted to share health information. How exactly I was going to do it, I don't know that I understood how. And I didn't know how, but I knew that I wanted to communicate health information. So yeah, it was something that I've been wanting to do ever since I was a medical student. And I always thought of whether I didn't know what I would do. Yeah, it was my dream to be on TV, but you never know if that will happen. But it was something that, you know, years before I even became a doctor was kind of percolating in my mind. I think it was part of who I was.
I'm interested to know because it's not a very a career option that most medical students and residents kind of think about as an option. You know, we think about either we go into medicine or we go into surgery or some hybrid of each other. What lessons and obstacles did you come across when you were navigating this route for yourself?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and you're right. Because I knew I wanted to communicate health information, I quickly kind of saw a few doctors, whether it was, the doctor on the Today Show at the time. There were far fewer doctors 20 years ago, or when I was in med school, 2001 to 2005. This wasn't even a thing that people wanted to do back then. There were very, very few doctors that talked about health information. On news stations, they didn't have doctors reporting. They had reporters reporting. So it was something that I found a few doctors that were doing it, and I watched what they did, and I looked and I learned. And, it's one of these things I think that evolved. There have been certainly lots of obstacles. I think with a lot of things in life, you sometimes have to make your own path, which is essentially what I had to do. I figured out how to do a medical broadcasting elective at a local TV station when I was a medical student. But, of course, my school, in most schools, when you're a medical student, that's not an elective that's usually offered. It wasn't offered at mine either. But, I had to get creative and speak to my deans and plead my case and do all of this stuff. And I was able to do a rotation at a TV station in Philadelphia for a month and running around with reporters and things like that. So, my point being is that it took a lot of digging around. It was, it's kind of like a full-time thing now. It was then. And I think that's probably the bigger message to those who are listening, is that oftentimes the things that you want to do, or maybe a vision that you have, whether it may not exist or it may not exist the way you see it could exist. And sometimes you have to create it. Sometimes you have to do some convincing. Sometimes you have to think out of the box. So, you talk about, Colin, this idea of a career option. It never really was a career option. It was just something I wanted to do and had to figure out how to get experience and try. Yeah. So, but that's going to be the thing with other students and other things, and whether you're a resident or attending or whatever, there's so many niches to be had. A lot of it has to do with thinking about what you want to do, where you feel like you can add value and have a vision for what you see, and then be willing to kind of work like Dickens to figure out how to make it happen. I think that's the most important lesson, is that it wasn't a career option. I didn't create it, of course, but at a time when, now everybody wants to be on social media, everybody wants to be on social media. But this wasn't the case. This wasn't the case 20 years ago. And there was no one out there. There were no models of this. And it wasn't even cool in medicine. In fact, I think one of the biggest hurdles I had to overcome was, in many cases, I didn't tell people my aspirations for fear of in the medical world being thought of as a flaky doctor, or a doctor who wasn't a real doctor. Nowadays, you can be on social media, you can have a podcast, you can be on TV, and nobody thinks that you're not a serious doctor, right? But back then, that wasn't the case. So in many situations, I didn't even talk about my interests or tell employers or whatever that I wanted to do this type of work. Yeah, it was completely different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad things have changed, certainly.
Yeah, there's so many points to that, and I can relate on a couple of levels where, when I finished medical school and before residency, I had, a gap year, and I went into culinary school. And when people heard about that, they thought it was, are you doing this as a hobby, or, what was it for? And I said, no, I really wanted to use it as an enhancement to my career path, because as the chronic health burden, we're just plagued with lifestyle-related diseases, and we need to use these tools, to be able to fight and combat that. And, and I've also, gotten a lot of, questions above people's heads of, why you're doing this. And I got into locum tenens, or as a traveling physician, and it's not a very common pathway as well. And my own father, similar to, some of the comments that you've heard, that, they didn't think that you were a real doctor. My own father didn't think, because he always thought that a doctor stood in one place, like either working at a hospital or in an office. So, it's very interesting. And I love the fact that, you've been able to carve that out for yourself. And, if it's something that you truly, truly want to go towards, to aspire to, be in that role, then, you'll figure out how to make that happen. So I think that's awesome.
And I think the message, too, if you don't mind me interrupting, and I love the story about you talking about your culinary work, right? I think that's a really great sort of example of this, where you took a step out and did something out of the box because it spoke to you. I think the biggest message for maybe those who are coming up is, not to necessarily expect what you want, not to necessarily see what you want. You may not see it. No one may be doing it. You may have to figure out how to accomplish the goal that you have, especially if it's not already out there. So just encouraging folks to not be afraid to do that. Because I think there's a lot of fear in sort of in the unknown, and also stepping out of the boxes that I think sometimes we feel we may be in as physicians,
Yeah, and then also it's also a component of the time that we live in. 495, the internet didn't exist.
Right.
And, now it's exploded, and, now everyone can broadcast themselves, what I'm saying? So,
and everyone can have a brand. It's so funny,
Yeah, and I think that's great, because, I think it's important to establish your own voice, not only to be heard, but, you want to be able to create, not necessarily a personality, how do I say, but you want to be able to mold yourself, and sometimes that could be through a brand, or that could be through an on-stage personality. But it's really about being honest and authentic, to yourself, and how you want to convey that.
Right. No, I think that's very well put. Exactly. Who are you, and how do you want to convey yourself? Yeah, I like that a lot.
Hey guys, we're going to be taking a short break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Thrive Bites. Let's get back to the interview. Just a curious note, when you first started, how did the deans and professors react to you, and how are they, I don't know if it's the same, administration now, but because you are working, for a school, how do they react and, support your current roles right now?
Yeah, I've actually been very lucky. I went to UMD&J School of Osteopathic Medicine, which is basically what Rowan School of Osteopathic Medicine is now with a name change. So I went to the school when it was UMD&J, and I'll be honest with you, my deans and things like that, they raised a little, they raised an eyebrow, like, what do you want to do? Come again? But I'll be honest with you, they supported me. I mean, they supported me pretty much throughout the whole thing. And, I was also a good student. I didn't have trouble in school. So, maybe that I didn't have trouble academically is what I'm saying, and this is what I would have said probably even to myself. If maybe I had trouble academically or with other issues, maybe it would have been better spent to focus my time on where it needed to be focused and not do a medical broadcasting rotation as a third or fourth year, for example. But, things were in place at the time. But I have to say, out of the goodness out of their hearts, they were very, very supportive. It's one of the reasons why I do medical media and came back to Rowan. Those were the attendings who have really always supported me. And they still do. They support my work, and I'm proud to represent Rowan and what was in UMD&J. Even when I was a medical resident because I stayed there for residency. I went away for internship and I came back for residency. I started writing articles for local magazines. That's before there were blogs. I had like a little newsletter. That was the equivalent of a blog. Like I had a Constant Contact, .com newsletter that I sent out to like 300 people, and I would write these little health articles. And I was a resident, so I wasn't a licensed physician, but my attendings in the Department of Family Medicine would read through them just to make sure I wasn't saying anything crazy. And publish them. And I mean, you're not a licensed doctor, so you got to be careful.
Yeah.
But I also looked for local, magazines in the community. Like there's a small publication called South Jersey Mom Magazine, and I went to the back of the magazine, found the editor's information. I wrote them or called them and said, hey, can I write an article about back to school for kids? I'm a family medicine resident. So I guess this is what I mean by creating your own path. There are a lot of things people see that I'm on TV now, but they don't really understand necessarily that it wasn't always TV, and there were all these little steps that led up to it. But your question was about the support I received, and even all the articles that I wrote for different publications, and things like that. My attendings always supported me, and I feel really, really lucky. It's actually probably one of the main reasons, besides wanting to come back to what I feel is home. But one of the main reasons I came back to Rowan is because they support the work that I do. So, and I know that's not the case. I have worked at jobs as an attending where they didn't quite support that, and I didn't feel like I could do this work. So
yeah. I think that's pretty cool. It's when you said that they would actually look at your articles before you actually release them.
Well, I asked them to. Yeah.
No, but the fact that they would respond and volunteer and actually took the time out, I think that it's great. I mean, because it's not a common, because it's almost like, it's like college. You're submitting a paper and a professor looks at it before you release it as your dissertation, so to speak. And, it's almost like, it doesn't seem, it's not a part of your typical roles and responsibilities as a medical student. But I think it's great that they took an extra look, an extra role to be able to do that for you.
Oh yeah, I mean they were excellent. Yeah, they were really, really great. And I mean basically they served as kind of a mentor if you really want to think about it. Which, as academic faculty, which is what I am now, we do this for students. Sometimes whether it's a student, whether I have a medical student that's having trouble, dealing with, say, anxiety or depression or, test-taking anxiety, they just like students come to, their faculty saying, I need help with this, or I'm struggling on this rotation, or, blah, blah, blah. They did that for me with media, which I'm definitely grateful for. So, yeah, no, I owe a lot to them, and I tell them all the time because I still work with them, which is really a pleasure for me. So I'm very grateful for Rowan SLM. And I also know that a lot of institutions are simply just not like this. So.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that. And I hope that, that can change over time because, who knows, you might have, other up and coming, Gen Caudles coming up, and, they maybe don't have the support that they
Right.
are, that they have because, it's something that they want to do. So,
That's right.
So shifting gears a little bit, I would love to talk about physician wellness and burnout. And, I think these are, rather hot topics or, so to speak, popular topics nowadays. But I feel that, it's been going on for some time. And I, personally, I think it's kind of rooted in poor self-care and lack of education on knowing how to take care of oneself during our medical training and schooling. And, most of the general public, patients, people that we cater to, they don't know the rigors, that we had to go through. And it can, bring a toll on us. So I want to ask, why do you think it's getting a spotlight, more nowadays? And what do you think we need to do to kind of change this?
It's interesting. I don't know why it's actually getting more spotlight now, to be honest with you. I'm glad that it is. Understanding and knowing the statistics, I think, probably has helped us, and being willing to face the facts. 400 physicians or so commit suicide every year. That's a lot. That's a lot of us. And there's plenty, right. I mean, it shouldn't be any. And knowing that, but I know there's plenty of other statistics that I just don't have off the tip of my tongue about students and residents and physicians feeling burnt out and what that does to us. But I think the most important thing is that we are paying attention to it, right? That's the most valuable lesson. And I think, when I was coming through, I've been in attending, I guess, for about 10 years, the idea of self-care and this and that, it wasn't valued the way it is now. And in some ways, you earned your stripes by being able to endure a lot, right? So in medicine, I kind of feel like the more you could do, the more you could deal with, the worse it was for you. It's almost like a rite of passage, or at least traditionally or historically, I think it's sort of been thought of that way. And I don't know that self-care has been valued.
Yeah, it's almost similar to like a frat mentality, so to speak.
And in some ways, I mean, right, I remember in residency, you never wanted to admit you didn't know what to do. You never wanted to admit that you were tired or you were overwhelmed or you were not doing well. Those were things that I just remember feeling like, wow, I don't want to say those things, right? For fear of not having an environment that would value that and support that, and an environment that wouldn't judge me for those feelings. So, I have a feeling that if I felt this way, I'm sure there's plenty others, rather, during my time or if not before. So, I mean, there needs to be, and there has needed to be for a long time, a culture shift. I'm glad the tide is changing. I'm glad we're now talking about things like self-care and how to take care of yourself. This wasn't even a conversation I even remember, having 10, 12 years ago. It was, you almost thought about a superhero the more you overcome and deal with. So I think it's a good conversation, and I think it's something, I think for those physicians who are even before me, who worked before the 80-hour work week was enacted, right? So there are physicians out there that were working 120 hours a week and things like that. It's a culture shift that we all have to get used to, but I think it's permission for all of us to take a look at ourselves and work to take care of ourselves, which is what we need. Sometimes we need permission to be able to do that.
I think that's great because, and it's very much so, because it is in a way kind of like a rite of passage, so to speak. And, I think that, ever since you go into medical school and then you have the opportunity to go into training, it's almost like once you get into it, you almost have to kind of earn your spot to be there, so to speak. And it has this kind of cloud of, I don't want to do any wrong, so, and most of us try to study hard, work harder, things like that. And, whenever these feelings and emotions pop up where, man, I'm just, I really don't know, or I'm just too overwhelmed with all these responsibilities. I don't know who to go to. I think, having different kind of mentors as we go up the ranks, because we go through like a hierarchy system from intern to, it's important to have those mentors like yourself, that's guided you through, in sort of speak through media broadcasting, for example, but just having a mentor to kind of hold your hand a little bit. So, but of course, we do have to put in the work because, a physician or doctor's, path going up these is an arduous one, no matter where you are, what I'm saying?
Right.
So.
That's right. You're right. It's tough. It's not easy, but I definitely agree with you. And I think it's a wonderful thing that you're talking about it on your podcast and other places, because this is what helps further that conversation, that dialogue, and also makes it okay, right? These conversations that we all have in academia, which is, having wellness being part of the curriculum for residents and things like that. I'm seeing our residencies do that, and having more resources for our medical students. This is wonderful. Mm-hmm. The more we talk about it, the more and the better it will get. So I think it's wonderful. I really do.
Yeah. And especially, you and me, we practice family medicine, and, primary care physicians are, role models, at the end of the day. We are community leaders. So a lot of people are watching us, whether we are, out there, or not. It's, we have patients that look at, watch us and things like that. So it's important to not only practice that self-care, because in a way, like, for example, I, cook, 2-3 times, if I'm not super busy, as much as I can. And when I convey that, to patients, I say, hey, from firsthand experience, these are the certain things you need to look out for, So, it's important to, to be able to practice that self-care, making sure that you hydrate well, sleep well, you do some sort of physical activity a little bit every single day, things like that. So, just talking, I love many spots that you, and a lot of features that you're on through magazines and different shows. You also talk a lot about, motivation and inspiration, for others, and having the colorful career that you've had for other, physicians. And it's not just students and residents, being on the group on Doctors on Social Media. It's a movement started by Dr. Donna Coriel, where, not only are we walking this path of being a physician, but we are also wanting to pursue different routes that not only enhance the career, but also, to enhance ourselves. So what would you say, having gone through the path that you've gone through, what does that offer, for people, especially for, different healthcare providers? What does that offer in terms of pursuing your own route? Like, for example, does it offer a better work-life balance for you? Does it offer more, happiness or more time for, X hobby or something like that? Like, what does that offer?
I think for me, and I'm probably just not, I don't know if I'm not necessarily typical, I would say. I did this because I'm, in terms of doing social media and not social media so much. The social media is secondary. It's writing articles, giving quotes to magazines. I do radio as well, and then I appear on TV. My media work really comes from this drive and deep passion to communicate health information. Interestingly enough, you asked, what do I get from it? And the examples you gave are, do I have more time, et cetera, et cetera? For me, no, because I'm a little crazy in the sense that the more that I can do is what I consider better, right? I work probably more than I would if I just did medicine. But that's not to say that I don't get a lot of other things from it, and it doesn't make me happy. That's what makes me insanely happy, and I feel really, really lucky to be able to have this sort of platform to really reach millions of people when I'm on television. It's an opportunity that I only dreamed of, that, I feel lucky every day that it's kind of come true. So, work-life balance, I'll be very honest with you. I wish I could tell you I have this great work-life balance. I don't. It's something that I always am working on, and I'm always trying to carve out time for myself, carve out time for spending time with other people. But it's a daily struggle. I'll be very honest with you. But for me, it's driven out of this desire to always do more if I can. but what I have gotten out of it is this like literally intense joy and pleasure from doing honestly what I love. I mean, I wouldn't do anything any other way. And that's, to me, just as valuable as some of the other things that we call. So, I think for me, I never envisioned myself seeing patients 40 hours a week, every week. I never saw that for me. I knew I wanted to do family medicine. I knew I wanted to teach. But I never saw myself only doing medicine. This was even before learning that media and communications was maybe what I wanted to do. I always knew that I had to have many different outlets, and the teaching is really important for me. I'm the clerkship director for the third-year family medicine clerkship at Rowan, SOM. I sort of am, I call myself a babysitting preceptor. You know, I fill in as a preceptor for the residents when the primary preceptors are unavailable. And then, I see patients and then I do media. I really need this sort of diverse, every day needs to be a little bit different for me, but that's just who I am as a person. Yeah. So what I get out of it is just every day waking up feeling like I'm the luckiest girl on the planet. And again, I'm not going to say that self-care is amazing for me and that and that I figured out work-life balance, because I haven't, but I work at it. And I think that that's sometimes, I don't want to say the best that we can do, but even being cognizant of it, maybe when we weren't, is a huge step up, right? Even thinking, what am I doing for myself today? What am I doing for myself this week? What time am I taking for myself? Have I spent time with friends this week? Have I seen my family lately? Even asking those questions, if we haven't been on the frame of mind to do that before, is an improvement. So I try to look at things. You mentioned motivational stuff, and it's so interesting because I never thought about myself or my posts as being motivational. I just try to talk about things that I resonate with or things that are on my mind. I think so often we get stuck up. We think very black and white, almost binary, right? I don't have work-life balance figured out. I don't have this promotion. I didn't get this, whatever, right? Yeah. But I think it's really, really important to pay attention to the small steps that we do take. And that's something I do try to do for myself, and it really, really helps me from feeling like it's either all good or it's all bad. That if this week, if I can just do a little bit more than I did last week, then you know what? Okay, we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there, and we're better off than we were the week before. And that's something it's a way of thinking that I really try to adopt, especially even with work-life balance, like I said, So it's a work in progress.
I love it. No, I think it's great to, and I appreciate your honesty in sharing that, because, even the roles, that we take, it's sometimes not, like you said, not binary, not black and white. And even our entire career path, from a bird's eye view, I'm like you. I really, really thrive on having a lot of diverse things and having something different and being able to enjoy and kind of, I guess, get the juice out of, squeezing everything. We just have like a big zest for life, So, and what you've chosen represents that. They represent, different aspects of who you are, so to speak, but just, conveyed differently. And, it's important, going back to what we were talking about before, is to remain, honest and authentic, and finding a way to, express yourself. And I think that, we say that medicine is kind of like science and art. And I think that this kind of adds to the art part of medicine, is really because we're so, conditioned and taught to just really use that, so to speak, left side of our brain, and not really encouraged or, just really, say like, hey, express yourself through this article that you did, express yourself through, how you, blog or go on air and things like that. And in a way you are. And I think that's beautiful, so. Well,
I actually think that's probably one of the reasons why I like doing this. And I think you put that in an eloquent way that I'm not sure that I had words for. I actually just posted a blog post right before we started taping this interview, right? And people do ask me, I have to be honest with you, how do you do it all? Like you ask the question, do you do it all? But some people say, how do you do it all? How do you blog? But I'll be honest with you, I get a lot from it. It feels like it's a creative outlet for me. The blog post I just put up was four simple ways to beat holiday stress. Well, where does that come from? That comes from the things I struggle with and the things I've learned over time, the things I tell my patients, the things I've seen in family and friends, what I hope the public will get. That's a creative outlet. That's something that I get something from that. Even when I go on TV, I did a TV segment yesterday talking about holiday heart, the concept of, historically non-drinkers with normal hearts, no underlying cardiac issues, drinking a lot during the holiday seasons or celebrations and then developing arrhythmias. And it was sort of that term was coined in the 70s by a physician or a researcher, et cetera. And so anyway, this is a time of year that we see people kind of overdoing it. And I was talking about this on the news, local Philadelphia news yesterday, but it's not just talking about medicine. It's also, interestingly enough, a creative outlet. I get to talk about stories. I get to share anecdotes. I get to educate. So, I should be clear that probably one of the reasons why I do a lot of what I do is because it serves so many purposes for me. It's not just work. It's not just work. It's creative. It's expressive. It's this ability to reach people, and then I get feedback. They'll write, "I hate this," or "I love this," or whatever they say. But I guess back to your point of creativity and how we're able to express ourselves and being authentic. Maybe one of the lessons I've learned is that there's many, many different ways to do all those things. And it may not come in the package that we thought, right? Sometimes we're surprised. I wanted to do TV news and stuff like that, but I never actually thought that I would crave doing it and that it would fulfill so many and check so many boxes for me. So it's been a pleasant surprise. And I would argue that we probably all have things in our lives like that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, for example, after I, went through culinary school, it was never, in my wildest dreams that I would, write a book. And the book really just highlighted, my journeys as a human being and as a professional. And it spoke a lot about emotional wellness and resilience. And I never imagined that. And, even this podcast was by accident, actually.
Really?
That was, it was never my intention. It actually, because when I just digressed a little bit. Like when I was creating my audiobook for, the audiobook version of the book, my webmaster, recommended this company that we're using on this platform. Okay. And then I looked at it, I was like, you could, easily make your own podcast. And, for years, I like to think to myself that I'm a natural conversationalist, and I really enjoyed, learning about people's stories and how that basically molded them, to who they are today. Yeah. And, like yourself, you probably have a lot of, great and amazing health and wellness experts that are friends and colleagues, and we would have these amazing conversations. And, there's so many gems and insights that, light bulbs that came from that. And I just thought to myself, you know what? I would love to share this, with people. And so that was how this podcast was born. So
isn't that amazing?
Yeah. And it's, I think a point I want to add is it's really about, it's almost like the magic of serendipity and how, perfect timing and opportunity, I'm sure you run into this a lot where, the right place at the right time. And it's really about that energy you give off. And I can definitely, see and hear that, through you. And I'm sure people who've met you can also feel that as well. It's like, you will attract different things in your life, and so I just love the fact that you express. I just love the fact that you've been able to express yourself, and by expressing yourself, you help others by doing that. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. And I really love the fact that you shared your story, because it's so interesting how you've, like you said, opportunity is serendipity, timing, et cetera. But I also have to say, like, I give you a lot of credit for sort of seizing the opportunity, right? Like, it came up, you saw this platform, right, that you were going to keep your audiobook, and then you're like, And I think there's another step to that, which like I said, I give you a lot of credit for, which is kind of dipping a toe in, right? Taking a little bit of a leap of faith. And you could have seen that and said, wow, that looks amazing. I don't think I could ever do that. Or, wow, that looks amazing. I don't know, which we all do about a lot of things. But you also decided to give it a try. And I think the other thing with me and medical broadcasting, every single day I get messages, and I love getting messages from people. The most commonly asked question I get is, how did you get started doing TV? That's the most commonly, So I actually have a video series on my YouTube channel about like my story, and I have different videos on this because it's literally the most commonly asked question I get. But I think the other part of it is, yes, it's opportunity and serendipity, but it's being willing to kind of take a little bit of a risk. And that's why I also encourage like medical students and residents and even attendings and those of us who've been out of practice for a while. This stuff doesn't come easy. But we know this, though, because we're doctors. Any doctor knows that, things don't come easy. Look at the process of being a physician. It wasn't easy for any of us. It was maybe easier for some of us than others, but it's not an easy task for anyone.
It's not.
No, it's not. And so I guess the other thing I would encourage folks to do is to be willing to just dip a toe in, just try. Because I think a lot of us probably have a lot of sort of deep-seated interests and things like that sound interesting, whether it's real estate investing or whether it's, you never know, building a motorcycle by hand, I don't know. But that we just may be a little bit cautious and shy about. And, so anyway, I give you a lot of credit for turning your book.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Podcast. It's awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I would like to add to that point where, it is, it's, again, that growing up phase through the medical pathway. But the thing is that it has an infrastructure, right? It has actual structure to it. But similar to like you and I, like it has an infrastructure. There's things that are laid out, right? But for the path that you've created and the path that I created, there is no blueprint, so to speak. There is no map. But the thing is that why we love it is because, and we've been talking about it throughout this episode, is why we love it is because it fuels us, right? It gets us up at that morning. It just gives us those creative juices to be able to, you love it so much, you want to give that love to other people. You know what I'm saying? Like you want to give that energy to other people. And for you, one of the ways is broadcasting. For me, it's, conveying, cooking and the love for it and how, you and everyone can improve your life by just being in the kitchen more, just for example, so. And, so I just, I love it. Hey guys, we're going to be taking a short break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Thrive Bites. Let's get back to the interview. So I want to close out. This has been great. Usually I love asking my guests, how do they personally thrive? But honestly, we've been talking about it all episode. I don't know if you have any other ways that you try to, keep pushing yourself. But if you can share that. And then the follow-up question is, because we're talking about, carving out your own path and taking a risk, if you could, maybe speak on maybe to upcoming students and residents on, just like 3 tips that if they are even having an inkling of, doing something a little bit different, right? Like, what would you say to them? So 3 tips for that.
Okay. All right. So I think the first one was about just any additional tips on thriving, right?
Personally thriving, yeah.
Right. And I think for me, it's, I try to lean into what makes me happy. I really try to pay very, very close attention to what feels right to me and what does not. And I think sometimes we need permission to do that. And I want to encourage other people, whether it's people in your life, whether it's jobs that you're in, whether it's extracurriculars, it doesn't matter what it is. But lean in towards the things that feel good and feel right. I've never gone wrong by doing that. When I listen to myself, things tend to be a lot better than when I don't. So I really make an effort when it feels good and it seems good, it feels like that sort of gut feeling, I lean into it. And the things that don't, even if I can't necessarily explain it, I really try to minimize. So that's something that's helped me thrive. And I guess I would say for medical students, it's interesting. I've started giving advice to medical students and residents on my YouTube channel, especially being a clerkship director for like 10 years and things like that. I realized there were a lot of tips I wanted to, a lot of things I wanted to say to them. So many things. But yeah, and I invite people to check out my YouTube. It's just at Dr. Jen Caudle. But there's a playlist for med students and residents. In terms of students who have outside interest or other things that, I've had students come to me saying they're interested in sports medicine because they want to be like a ringside doctor for, like, say, boxing. I've had students come to me saying, actually one student that was interested in food and cooking and how to integrate that into their future practice of medicine, kind of what you do is what I'm thinking they may want to do, et cetera. I'm always very encouraging. I would say pay attention to what it is that catches your interest and hold on to that. It may not always be look, in med school's tough. First and foremost, you got to do well. You've got to do your work. You've got to do that right. Learn the stuff. You got to you have to do that right. There are no shortcuts, right? There are no shortcuts. You have to do well, and you need to graduate, and you need to go to do a residency and do well. Like, this is just what has to happen. But what you do along the way is you keep track of these things that you're interested in, and you slowly but surely learn as you can. And Colin, you said something about how you love people's stories. I often say to med students, seek out someone who's doing what you're doing. Follow them on social media. Learn about their lives. I often tell people who want to know about my life, the best way is to follow me on social media. I'm pretty transparent. You can learn a lot by a person and maybe what they do that you want to do by seeing their life, seeing how they post. But you can also reach out to people and say, hey, tell me how you became this ringside doc, or tell me how you became to specialize only in this type of headache, et cetera. And then, again, keeping priorities straight, I think, is very, very important.
Yes.
But I would also say, too, as students and residents are going through this process, social media is taking a different turn than what it was when I was a student. I still say for those who are still in the process of being selected for something, whether you need to get a residency or you need to get into med school or you need to whatever, be thoughtful about the image you portray. Now, I'm not saying do this or do that or don't. I'm just saying be thoughtful about what you portray to the world as you are still going through this process. But with that, I say it's important to be yourself and to really kind of keep the dreams that you have in mind. Keep them front and center because they can happen. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah, I think that's great. And to add to your point, it's it's about taking that risk, and it's about who knows? Like, you have nothing to lose by reaching out to that person. To either shadow them or mentor them, or or have them mentor you. So there's risk, but there's no that how would you know if you don't ask or take the chance?
That's exactly right. Yeah, so I definitely encourage folks to do that. But I think being a medical student and a resident, as hard as it is, it's also a very exciting time. It's literally you becoming the person you were meant to be, and you can look at that from a medicine point of view, right? But also for the other things that you may have interest in. So that is the time to be cultivating who it is you see yourself being in the future, which is I think really exciting.
Yeah, and there's no there's no hard and fast. There's no black and white to this. It's, life is, to me, it's gray. What I'm saying? And not just for medical students out there, even for our attendings who are listening in, or for the general public, physicians that have already been in practice. There's always a shift, and something might spark your interest. Some passion might arose, and it's important to look into that. What I'm saying? Because they are, part of you. They are, components of you. And I think it would be, a travesty if you don't look into it. What I'm saying? Because as you can hear, both of us, we love what we do, and, we wouldn't trade it. What I'm saying? Because you talked about not attaining a quote unquote work-life balance, but you love it, right? So
I wouldn't I probably wouldn't do it a different way if I were given the opportunity, which is about the only way I want to live life. Is if I had to do it again, would I do it differently? Well, probably not.
Yeah. I'm sure you had a lot of fun doing it. So, Jen, Dr. Jen, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your passion and, your wisdom for, other people who want to be, future Jen Caudles or future themselves, rather, So if people want to look you up or want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
So my website is drjencaudle.com, but I'm also at Dr. Jen Caudle for all my social. That's Instagram, Twitter, etc. So I definitely encourage, send me a message, and also my YouTube. Definitely check out my YouTube. It's got lots of videos for med students, residents, but also for patients and stuff too. So check it out. Everything's at Dr. Jen Caudle.
Okay. Very, very simple. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you again. I really appreciate it. Guys, if you love this, please check us out weekly for Thrive Bites, and thank you for listening on. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
Hey guys, that was another episode of Thrive Bites. If you like that episode, please subscribe and follow weekly for new episodes. And don't forget to rate us on Apple Podcasts.